Yes, I'm back.
Great.
But okay, yes. So I was talking about the child care unit, special children's police. It's supposed to be there. Now let me try to share my screen. Okay. Now there is supposed to be a special unit for children at the police station, specialized children police unit. But is this available? Not that I know of. A lot of police stations don't have that. So children are actually subjected to the same processes in investigation as the adults. You can only pray that you have police officers that are reasonable when child offenders come before them. This special children police unit is supposed to be comprised of trained officers. You know, the Act provides for training and retraining of officers, so they know how to handle children, how to take care of children's needs when they come there. But we don't have that. And I know that the Act encourages the use of alternative dispute resolution mechanisms, you know, to resolve issues concerning children. And well, they're supposed to go to court, to be taken to court only as a last resort. The Act also provides detention of children pending investigation. Of course, is frowned at by the court, even the Act itself. So one of the things I'm sure we'll have to address at the point is the specialized children police unit. When are we going to have those things now in the country? I know that at least I have good authority that Akwa Ibom State was able to improvise and have an arrangement with the police where they have what is called a family unit that attends to cases, family cases, including that of children, family in the police station, I think at the police headquarters. You know, it may not be all that is required, but apparently there's some effort being made there. And I think this is mainly within the purview of the commissioners of police. They can work with the states to ensure we have the special units. Going back, now there is, if we're able to have that, then there is issue of detention, remand. The law provides, of course, that children really shouldn't be remanded. When arrested, taken to the police station, they should be released to their parents on bond. But if the police feels that releasing the child to the parents may cause more harm, because we know there are situations where the parents or someone in the family may actually be also a bad influence on the child. So even if the child offender, sometimes they want to take you out of an environment that is not proper. So then they would have to find some other means of remanding the child. It shouldn't be at the police station. Ordinarily, the child should be taken to court for remand, but taken to court so the court can give an order for remand. But it is not always the case. I know that there are supposed to be correctional remand centers. So that actually brings that up. Remand centers is supposed to be there. But how many states have it? That is a problem, another challenge that needs to be faced. I spoke to a magistrate recently about the remand centers, and she mentioned that she sent a child, she ordered that the child be remanded in a government facility, but the child was taken there and it rejected. They said they had their hands full, the facility enough, so they turned the child back. You know, so it became a dilemma. The child had to stay over at the police station in the care of the police as a child offender. So these things are there. Some of the issues that children have to face, child offenders have to face. Of course, at the police station, there is the presumption of innocence until proven guilty. The child should be notified of the charge against him, and of course, the parents have to be present. Parents or guardian too, and there must be legal representatives too. All these things, they're available for adults, but more so for children at the stage of investigation. Now we have the trial process. Going to the trial process, we're talking about child offenders mainly now. the trial process for the child offender is, according to the Child Rights Act, it's supposed to be the family court is the court that has jurisdiction to try child offenders. The family court, you have it at the high court level and you have it at the magistrate court level. At the high court level, of course, it sits with the judge and 2 assessors. They have designated ranks, and one of them has to have something, education related to child psychology. Then in the magistrate courts, also, something similar provisions there. But the Act also makes provision for the trial of children. Sorry, now there are situations where the children are tried with adults. So you have a bit of complication there. Sometimes they are tried in regular courts. Now, concerning the family court, I'll just come back to it. The family court is provided for in the Act, yes. But before then, before the Act came out, before we had the Child Rights Act, the Children and Young Persons Law has been operational. So states that have the Children and Young Persons Law, that do not have the Child Rights Law there, now have to make recourse. They will have recourse to the Juvenile Court, which is set up pursuant to the Children and Young Persons Law. This court is, it's also for the children, child welfare cases and all, but there are a lot of provisions that you have in the Child Rights Act that you don't have the Children and Young Persons Law. So the juvenile court and the family courts, well, they have similar jurisdiction, but as I mentioned earlier, wherever the Act is operational, it will supersede the provision of Children and Young Persons Law. Now, in where I come from, we have the Child Rights Law, but the family court is not yet composed. It's not established, so to speak. It's not established. So the law is there, but we don't have the court. So people still they still take cases of child offenders to the juvenile court. It is not ideal, but that is what goes on. And sometimes I know the magistrate sitting there is a bit handicapped in orders. The orders she can make are orders that relate to the Children and Young Persons Law, not the ones that relate to the Child Rights Law. Yes, so those challenges are there. Then generally we have salient provisions relating to trial of child offenders, the right to counsel, restriction of court attendance, course of adults in cases involving children, prohibition of publication of child name address in schools. We have all that on the screen. We also have some challenges here because reporting of cases involving children, we really need a bit more education on that. Even recording such cases, we need more education on that. I came across a publication sometime, but this was a case I handled at the High Court. I came across a publication and referred to the judgment in that case, and I saw the name of the child in that article. I felt terrible. They were referring to the judgment and the name of the child. And I realized that it was probably because, this was a child victim. There was a child. I realized it was probably because in the judgment itself, the name was spelled out in full. So they just picked it up from there. I've seen posts on social media, with these names, and, it actually goes against the provisions of the Act. There are a lot of confidentialities associated with the cases concerning children, and this should be respected. So, let's see if we can make progress. So the punishment process. The court, of course, is prohibited from using terms such as conviction and sentence and for observation or investigation. There are several remand centers and place mandating. And of course, non-custodial administration of criminal justice act also emphasizes non-custodial. We have these challenges with respect to children and the criminal justice system. That's when it comes to, sorry, the investigation process. I'm just trying to get the slide back to you. Sorry.
No worries.
Yes, the investigation process. So
Mm.
there's a lot to be done. There's a lot to be done concerning this the process before the courtroom. The environment has to be conducive for children. The environment, the trial environment has to be conducive for children. So we have a lot of places where, if you see some of the courts where these children are being tried, it's not ideal at all. It's not ideal. That's why we advocate for the setting up of the family court, which will make a more comfortable environment, more comfortable facilities for children. And the main problem with the investigation process is the fact that children may not be comfortable. They may not be comfortable while they're being examined, if you don't have properly trained officers. And I'm also aware that in some states, the regular courts, magistrate courts, handle cases of child offenders at their discretion, especially when the child rights law is not there. They handle them at their discretion, remand them as you will. Okay, do you just send them home? And the difficulty really in cases where serious cases of arson, cases such as arson, magistrates have reported that they have difficulty deciding what to do with the children, where the child rights law is not operational, or where the family court is not operational. So I'm going to send. Okay, I'm just sending this to your WhatsApp, so
Okay.
you can open it, yes, and then help to share. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And
I
I
did.
want us to.
Yeah.
Yes, I want us to move on to. Let me move on quickly. I know our time is far gone, so I want to move on quickly to children as victims. Children as victims. What does the justice system? What does it hold for them? How are they treated? How are children victims? Children are victims in lots of ways. Once they're abused, they're subject, they're victims of violence, sexual abuse, of course, we are all aware. Then they're victims of kidnap. You have lots of cases of kidnap going on now, and in fact, a number of them quite heartrending. There are some cases but a lot more domestic violence. Children are also subjected to domestic violence by even the family members. In fact, it is sad that members of the family are actually becoming part of the problem for kids. I say this with a bit of, I just recall a few cases that I've had, they come to mind, and a number of them are not pleasant at all. I've had to prosecute a dad for defiling his daughter and having the child go through a lot of trying time, trauma. And we've had cases of minders in school sexually molesting children. We've had cases, in fact, some are still going on. We have cases of a pastor, of pastors, religious leaders, abusing children. We have cases of mothers, relatives, all kinds of domestic violence between our children, child trafficking, child stealing. I have a case right now, 2 children stolen from a parent, abducted, and sent out one has been found. After 1 year, interestingly, after a year, the child was taken from Port Harcourt to Abia State, from River State to Abia State. And somebody from River State, from Port Harcourt, adopted this child and brought the child back to River State. Someone saw the child, the child was about 4 years old at then. someone saw alerted the dad, and quite early in the morning, the late stage, and that's how they got the child back. But the same man still has his 18-month-old baby girl still out there. Nobody knows where the child is. So there are lots of cases like that. Now, how does the criminal justice system treat them?
Mm.
Well, since you don't have conducive units in the police station to listen to evidence, to listen to these children, recording their evidence, first of all, is a problem. You've had cases, people are asking them questions. The children are sometimes terrified because those that are examining them and asking them what happened are not the right persons to ask those questions. They don't know anything about the child's psychology. So there are cases where children, the ones that can write, okay, just write your statement and give it to me, and it's tendered in court. Then you have ones, okay, say what you know, the police officer writes it down, and that is it. Then another officer comes, the child has to tell the story again. The child is further traumatized because of the environment. Now we could get to court. Getting to court is still another part of the trauma. Because cases involving children are oftentimes tried in regular courts because the children are the victims. Now, a better approach, really, it's something that I learned they do in one of the states also. I learned that Akwa Ibom State does that, and that is taking children's evidence in the family court. Because the family court they have there is like a sitting room. It's very comfortable. So even if a child is a witness, the victim, and it appears as a witness in the high court, a case where the offender is an adult, for the purpose of taking that evidence, the child is taken to the family court. So it's a comfortable environment. Evidence is taken, and then you go back to the regular court. But what I've experienced a lot of time is the child sitting in the witness box, or a chair, one we had to improvise in the full courtroom, in the open courtroom, but of course, attendance is restricted. I can give it to them. That provision of the law is complied with, that when a child is given evidence, it is only principal parties, that the child's family, the offender, and the lawyers that are there. But in most cases, these trials are held in the courtroom, which can be intimidating. You see a judge sitting up there, and the child is just below and looking up to the judge. I had the case where we just kept turning the chair of the child, so she wouldn't even be looking at the perpetrator, the person, her abuser, because the child was scared, and she was there for an hour being examined and cross-examined, talking about, this child was old, 8 years. She was talking about sexual abuse. If statements of children are recorded at the police station, if they are recorded, I don't think it will be necessary for the child to come and recount her story again in court. I've had a case where we had to let go because the doctor advised that bringing that child to court was going to reopen a lot of, would affect her psychologically. She had gone through some bit of counseling, trauma, been taking care of her, the hospital. For this particular one, the hospitals actually took charge. Then you bring the child to court. And they said no, for the sake of this child. So we had to let go of that case. Now we also have a kidnap case. I have a kidnap case. They're trying to decide whether or not this child is going to come. Apart from disrupting the child's classes, education, you also have exposing the child further to the child's the kidnapper, the abductor. But I have difficulty there because the investigating police officer is not even so competent.
Mm.
And the evidence, the investigation is not thorough. There are lots of things, loopholes in the investigation which don't add up. And you know, when you're prosecuting criminal cases, it's proof beyond reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
So it's a case where I saw that, look, this case is slipping away because the police have not done the proper thing, because they have not investigated properly. A lot of times they depend on confessional statements, and that is it. What of circumstantial evidence? If they could just go a step further, it would actually save us a lot more trouble. So that is something that's even we're wondering how we're going to do it, because the child is because of the interest of the child. Now I'll go quickly to try to round up cases of punishment. Sorry, okay. Now criminal cases. What happens? Cases involving children, why are they abandoned? Cases involving children are often abandoned halfway through because of several reasons. Financial settlement of parents by defendants, by the offenders. You know, people come to them and offer them money. They offer parents money, and parents, okay, let's just forget it. Peanuts in most cases.
Mm-hmm.
Because of poverty, people accept peanuts and then abandon these cases. There is one that I have been calling the mother. Suddenly, she is no longer picking her calls. But the last time I called, I said, I'm going to get you arrested if you don't show up, because your child sat in the court for an hour and was examined, went through that trauma, and you won't settle. There are cases where the judge has even told parents, if you try this, I'm going to get you remanded. So I think that we have to really make people understand that the children's interest is also important. That is something that the Child Rights Act emphasizes. Whatever is being done, the interest of the child is paramount. So we also have pressure from religious bodies and family members. Religious, oh, forgive. You know, are you not a Christian? Forgive. And then let go. Family members, they don't want the name of the family to be dragged. You know, we don't want embarrassment. There is also slow pace of trials leading to loss of interest. The average time you conclude some of these cases, well, let's say about 3 years. A lot of cases last that long. Some 5 years. So part of the problem sometimes is the courts really. If a judge or a magistrate is serious about taking cases involving children, day to day, accelerated hearing should be given and let the cases be concluded. I know of 2 cases that, no, more than 2, there's several cases like that were abandoned because the parents just got tired of coming to court and the evidence of the child not yet taken. We also have threats and intimidation by defendants, families and associates, then the stigmas associated with all this. So expenses incurred in procuring attendance of expert witnesses. There are cases where you go and ask for a doctor, you'll be surprised to know how much you're going to spend. Same applies to the police. The IPOs, especially when they are gone out of jurisdiction, who is going to pay their transport? So that's why we need funds. That's part of my recommendation. There should be funds for victims and for cases like this. Lack of shelters. There's certain cases where you want to take the children out of the environment of abuse. You can't take them out. Some of them are maids. There are some cases that have been reported to me as an NGO worker, and reported to me, and I said, we have to take this. And the girl says, no, where will I go to? They'll take me back to the village. I'm staying with my aunt or my uncle, the other children. So they remain in that environment because we don't have shelters to take these children to. So let's move on now. Investigation and trial processes. I think we've done all that. We've talked a lot about that. So some cases, of course, don't get to court because of the illiteracy, lack of information. And let me go to the challenges. Non-domestication of the Child Rights Act by states, of course, means they wouldn't have a family court and they won't be able to enforce the laws. Then we also have non-domestication of Okay, of course, of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act, that's part of it. Influence of Sharia law states that are yet to actually state law. And so far, the Child Rights Act, I believe, has been domesticated by about 25 states. We still have 11. We still have 11 to go. While the ACJ, the Administration of Criminal Justice Act, is about 30 states now. So mostly states in the north. And a lot more work needs to be done. I learned recently that one of the states in the north agreed to domesticate the law, but make it marry it with the Sharia law. I don't know how they're going to do that, but they'll make it compatible with Sharia law, provisions of the Sharia law. I don't know. I'm waiting to see the law when it is passed. I saw something like that in the media. Now, undue exposure of children in the media and poor reporting system. You know, you have children, victims of kidnap, victims of traumatic situations that are being exposed to the media. They're on television. Children are rescued from abductors, and you're putting them on the television. You are abusing, further abusing and traumatizing these children. So these are things that we need to avoid. There has to be a culture. There has to be training. Even our journalists need to have that training to know how to report cases involving children. Unfortunately, social media, does not help because people just post things. And we all need to be more careful when it concerns children, not to expose them unduly. We're looking at solutions, more aggressive campaigns, and for domestication of these laws, and the creation of adequate institutions and facilities, special units for operation of the law, child correctional centers, bottle institutions, children's homes, and all that. We need to have those institutions in place. We need funding. This facility should be funded. Medicine Sans Frontiers did fantastic work. I know in River State, unfortunately, they're leaving River State now, from what I gathered. But you know that cases involving sexual offenses and trauma counseling for children have been free of charge. So adequate training of officers, we need to look at all this, building shelters for victims, all that needs to be done. So I've taken a lot of time already. I'm sure any other thing not covered here, we can have a discussion session. I can take some questions. So, well, at this stage, I want to say thank you very much for listening to me. And I hope that you've been able to pick out a thing or two about the criminal justice process, children and the criminal justice in Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Cordelia. I must say you did very well, and despite the challenges of technology. So just to a kind of quick rundown, you did tell us about the various laws that are in force in the criminal justice system. Of course, the Constitution, the 1999 Constitution, Child Rights Act of 2003, Administration of Criminal Justice Act, and I mean, and then even the laws that have been in force since before independence, Children and Young Persons Act, and in some states those laws still remain in force. So I mean, not wanting to get too technical because not everyone is a lawyer, and really the point of these sessions is really just to make really all of us be aware of what's happening, because the justice system isn't just about lawyers or judges. It affects everyone because we are to an extent where we are all victims of crime. I mean, or like people are witnesses, and really there needs to be trust and confidence in the justice system. The judiciary is the third arm of government, so it needs to work. It needs to work for all of us. So you did touch on this issue about when is a child or becomes an adult. The law says, or the Constitution says, under 18 you're a child, but in some states, a 17-year-old could be regarded as an adult. And then, as you said, in 11 states of the North, where they operate Sharia law, a girl, and this is where, you know, the issue of discrimination comes in, a girl of maybe, I don't know, even 11 or thereabouts could be classed as an adult, whereas I suppose a boy is still classed as a child. I mean, my understanding of Sharia law when it first came in was that it only applied to maybe like civil and family cases and was applicable only to those who signed up to it because it's a religious law. But now it seems to have crept into, you know, criminal justice. And I think in the environment we're in now with what's happening with insurgency, banditry, whatever, you know, one wants to call it, really there needs to be a grip on what laws are applicable. And because we have to face it that in a nation where there are 13 million children, school-age children out of school, a lot of those children are involved in criminal activity. But as you have rightly pointed out, you know, these children aren't carrying AK-47s or whatever by themselves. They are actually either they are forced into, you know, becoming terrorists, or through poverty, it's their parents who even push them, or of various other factors, so other causes of criminality. Yes, in fact, I'm just looking at a comment made by Bukun that for girls in the north of Nigeria, are they considered adults at puberty for marriage purposes only, or for all adult issues, including crime? Yeah, and I think that's,
yeah.
yes.
Yes, I've seen the comment too. Now, when a child is considered an adult for the purpose of marriage, it means she becomes a victim. She becomes a victim because it means she can have sexual intercourse at that age. And that is something that ordinarily should not happen. So in the laws, you know, where we look at it, that would be rape, that would be defilement. If you're looking at the criminal code or you're looking at the child rights law, because the child rights law provides that if you have sexual intercourse with a child below, of course, a child is the age of 18. So anyone below 18, you're having sexual intercourse with that child, it's a criminal offense. And you know, the child cannot give consent, not being an adult. Even the consent, you say, okay, she's my wife, she gave consent. That consent is actually not valid in law. But where a particular law accepts that form of marriage as normal, then the child is a victim. So the female children, they are victims, yet you cannot punish the offenders, the adult offenders, because it's accepted.
Yes. One thing that actually, you know, I've been thinking about, and probably with the kidnappings, it's probably been made apparent. Not, and I don't want to get too much into religious or traditional issues, but not everyone from Borno State or Katsina State or those states sign up to Sharia law. Not everyone in those states practices Islam. And I think it has been apparent if we talk about some schools that have been on the news because they've been victims of kidnapping and so forth. So where do those girls fall in this issue of marriage? Of course, unlikely that their parents would marry them because they do not practice Islam. But when it comes to issues of whether being victims like a sexual assault, how would that be dealt with? Would that be under Sharia law, or would that be under, for example, child and young persons law? Is
Well, it's a bit tricky. It's a bit
mm,
tricky, talking about the laws that would be applicable in the North. We've seen cases where people that didn't sign up for it actually made to undergo trial under those religious laws. There are a lot of them that have been in the media. So I think it also depends on the states involved and how they stay concerned and how radical they are in application of the law. There's a lot that's been going on. So one cannot say for sure that generally this is what would be obtaining in the North concerning these cases. Now you mentioned kidnap. Kidnap is not just it's not an offense, it's not a crime that is peculiar to any part of the country. It's not just by the North. It's sad that we are seeing so many children being taken out of their schools, abducted for ransom, as kidnapped. It's terrible. But you see, it happens everywhere. In the South, it also happens. We have children being kidnapped. They're drivers. They're drivers, the security guards. They all mastermind kidnap of children, and it should be condemned wherever it happens. So the thing is to avoid using religious coverings, to avoid using religion, avoid using tradition, cultural systems to cover up crimes. A crime is a crime. Every crime about the child, against the child, is a crime. So we have to say it that way, irrespective of whatever religion we are creating or laws we are creating.
yes. So then you did talk about the special children police unit.
Yeah.
In fact, before I come on that, there's a comment here, a question about how does the law protect children accused of witchcraft, being witches, and prevent them from going through such a harrowing experience?
Okay, I can see that that is culture and tradition, and it's terrible. In fact, that mutilation, those are all harmful and dehumanizing traditional practices. These should be stopped. There are laws in certain states that actually protect not just children, even adults from this kind of situation. We have in River State, for example, I know we have the dehumanizing and the law prohibiting dehumanizing and harmful traditional practices. It's enforced, but a lot of people don't know the laws are there. Even the ones that know don't utilize it. Now we have people in local environment, a lot of the time, people in the communities that are subjected to these dehumanizing practices. They're actually criminal offenses, but it is for them to report. So we need to take advocacy down to the grassroots, down to the communities. The NGOs need to be available at the community level. We should go to local government areas, local government headquarters. There should be offices. A lot of the time, people are concentrated in urban centers. The people that really need this attention are those in the rural areas. So if there is, you can train them. They have women groups, the youth groups. Sometimes take it to extremes. This one of my cases that somebody was brought out of the house. Later, it turned out that she refused to sleep, have sexual relations with her. It is a criminal offense, putting it simply, and people should report to the police and insist that action be taken. Sadly, some of these cases go to the police and they take them as, oh, it's a family matter, they're small cases. It's a minor case. It's just like cases of domestic violence sometimes, and you can resolve it, but then it should be taken seriously, and there should be more reporting. There should be more reporting of people who are actually punished for doing such things. When we have these stories in the media, you realize that people are going to be more careful about what they do. They won't think it's just a normal thing.
Yes, I think there's a question about disabilities. Let's see. What happens when the child, either as a survivor or in conflict with the law, is a child with disabilities? What provisions do we have under the CJS?
Oh, there is supposed to be special facilities for children with disabilities. There should be. There are provisions. That's why I said the Child Rights Act is very comprehensive. It's quite comprehensive. So if properly applied, it caters for children that, have disabilities. But do we have such facilities? A lot of this boils down to provision of facilities. The laws are there, but the state governors, they need the will. Policymakers, it's important for them to take the issue of children seriously. What of the ministries of social welfare? Are they properly funded? How many children's homes do you have? How comfortable? Some don't even have one. Or if they have one, it just fit for all purpose. It's not even sufficient. I told you about somewhere that it was even a child was turned back. So children with disability, they have a right to be heard. They have a right to all the facilities that regular children have. But we have to push our state, our government, to make facilities available. In some cases, it's the governor's wives that take up these issues as pet projects. So I think we should try and do a bit more advocacy, more pressure, for states to make those facilities available.
Yes, I must say, even here, because you remember you mentioned about remand centers and being like safe havens pending trial and so forth.
Yeah.
I can tell you, even in the UK, it is a challenge. It's the local authorities that have a primary duty to accommodate young people, so young suspects or young offenders. And for the suspects or the defendants who are accused of serious crimes, sometimes they need to be in a secure venue, secure accommodation.
Yeah.
And it's a very limited resource. It costs a lot of money. I mean, on average, to have a secure accommodation, you're talking about upwards of £3,000 a week. And because it's not just about having it, locked up with barbed windows and high fences and so forth, it's providing educational facilities for the child, health issues, because probably mental health, plays a big part, and so forth. And it's very expensive, and sometimes it means that the child is taken far away. So, for example, if the child were living with the family in London, the secure accommodation might be hours away in Manchester, and the child has to be brought down to court into London and so forth, and taken back. So it can be quite a challenge, but then it's not a reason for it not happening.
Can I come in there?
I'm sorry?
Concerning these facilities, yes. I just wanted to add something. We know I have said that the government should do more, but in all sincerity, I think that the government cannot handle it all, can't do it all alone. We have corporate bodies they have CSR, their corporate social responsibility provision for CSR. So they can take up some of these projects as part of their CSR. They can decide to train officers, they can decide to provide some of these facilities and then hand them over to government, rather than maybe cash donations and all that. So if they decide to take up one correctional center, or every month, you say, okay, every year we give a grant to this facility, or we're going to provide all the feeding, whatever you need. I think it's going to help all of us. Because like you rightly said, we're all in this, we're all affected. When you have children that are roaming the street, they come to your street, come to you to tap your windows and, street begging. Of course, you're not comfortable with it. You have, look, in fact, there's a case of, in cultism, let me just say this, cases of cultism right now, it's mainly teenagers. A lot of them are teenagers, 14, 15, 16, because you have them initiated in secondary schools. You even have cults in some primary schools now. So these are young people and we are all affected. What happens sometimes in such cases, the police increases the age. They will unilaterally say they're 17 or they're 18, so they can try them as adults. It's a very sad situation, but that is the truth. That there have been allegations. Okay, let me say there have been allegations that this is done by police officers. We had such a battle in one of the cases that I prosecuted. It was a child someone being tried for murder. They contested the age in court, but unfortunately, they contested that age only at address stage. The court ruled that they could not, they couldn't do anything about it at that stage because the police, the statement of the child read 18, stated 18, and they didn't contest it earlier because you can only prove that the child is less than 18 if you have the birth certificate. So if the age had been challenged earlier, that would have come. So we have young children committing violent crimes now. That's why we are all involved, and whatever needs to be done to fund, these institutions, setting up the institutions, is very important. We should all do it.
Yes. I think there's just one. I'm conscious of the time, but there's just one question that. Oh, I think I pressed the wrong button. So let me summarize it. Culture and tradition play a big part in the criminal justice system, especially regarding children, where it is encouraged that they are seen rather than heard. Issues reporting crimes against adults for fear of not believed or seen as disrespectful. Yes. What are your thoughts about teaching children and families as a whole about their rights under laws? Public.
Okay. Yes, culture and tradition it is very important. Well, we like to protect our African culture, but there is a shift. The children you have now, most parents will tell you, they are not that kind of, not the kind of children we used to be. When an adult says, don't say anything, and then no, what they do, they beat the child and tell you not to cry. They beat the child. If you cry, shh, that's what they do. But now the child will ask you, why wouldn't I cry? The children are taught to ask questions now. And in schools, I think they teach them their rights. So it starts from school. Parents, yes, parents will do that. But some parents don't even know the rights to teach their children. They don't believe the children have any rights. But then when they are taught in school, they come back, to the home and display these things. So sometimes there's a conflict between the child and the parents or guardians because the parents feeling the child is disrespectful while the child is just being outspoken and then exercising his or her rights. I think parents need a bit more education. Parents also need to be a bit more open-minded about this thing. So when we're talking about advocacy, We have to, and this advocacy again goes down to rural areas also. Parents have to be ready to accept change. There is a movement right now. There is a change, paradigm shift. The narrative is changing. So your children are, there's the internet everywhere. They have access to information. So we have to be ready to move with the times and equip ourselves with knowledge so that when your children come, you don't feel intimidated or threatened, and you know the proper way to attend to the children. You know, you can't flog your children easily the way you used to with look for more civilized. There are other ways of attending to children than the way it used to be back then. So yes, more education is needed of parents.
Yes, yes, definitely, definitely. Well, I think it remains for me to say, thank you very much for your presentation. We have got your slides, and that would be available on the YouTube channel, and anybody who wants to refer to it, it can be sent to them. You did touch on very pressing issues. If I may say that I would actually welcome um, input, presentations from, like I said, the policy makers, the legislators, because I think there needs to be more awareness of these laws and how they should be implemented. Yes, funding is an issue. You touched about the corporate bigwigs actually put in money. And if they are aware that this money isn't just going into government coffers, it's actually going to deal with specific training needs, whether it's specialist police officers, whether it's uh, addressing accommodation for children pending trial, whether it's dealing with child witnesses. I mean, every day we see child victims, child witnesses on TV who maybe have been rescued. And I just think, what are they going
Right.
through? Where's the child psychologist that is counseling them? How is their evidence being gathered? So, these are, I think, training needs that you have identified.
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
I'm very much willing to take forward, and there are experts both in Nigeria and abroad who, can offer this training and share the knowledge. There just needs to be the coordination. Um, like I said, thank you very much, Cordelia, for taking the time to share your experience with us. Thank you to all the participants that have joined us, and also to my crew, my team, if I may call them that, Madonna, Ibukun, and Sheyi. The next CJAC session is likely to be in May, and I will put a notice out about the particular topic, but I would welcome input really from the participants. Especially, I'm looking to want to address issues of mental health. How do we deal with mental health within the criminal justice system? So the medical experts, the psychiatrists, you're welcome, very welcome. I'm going to be touching also on road traffic, but you'll be hearing more about that in due course. So I wish everyone a good evening and a good weekend, because we are Friday today. Thank you very much. Good night.